Picture this. A broken rancher rides into a deadly blizzard with no intention of coming home, ready to let the cold end his pain after losing his wife and baby daughter. That was me, Jacob Harrison, until I stumbled upon 4 starving children in an abandoned cabin, fighting to survive on their own. As I sheltered with them through the storm, the youngest boy led me to a hidden note tucked behind a loose board. What was written in that faded paper didn't just save those children's lives. It pulled me back from the brink of death and showed me that sometimes our greatest purpose comes from our deepest pain. If you've ever felt like giving up, this story will show you that hope can come from the most unexpected places. Hit that like button if you believe in second chances, subscribe for more stories of redemption and family, and ring the bell, because what these children called me next will bring tears to your eyes. The February wind howled across the Wyoming Territory like a living thing, carrying snow so thick I could barely see my horse's ears. I pulled my hat down lower and urged thunder forward into the white void, each step taking me further from my ranch and deeper into what I hoped would be my final journey. My name is Jacob Harrison. Most folks just call me Jake. At 52, I've worked this land for over 20 years, built a life that once meant everything to me. But that was before my beloved wife Mary died, bringing our daughter into this world. Before little Elizabeth succumbed to fever at just 6 months old. Before the silence of my empty house became so deafening, I couldn't bear another day of it. I'd planned this for weeks. Tonight, in this storm, I'd ride until thunder couldn't go any further. Then I'd dismount and let the cold take me. It seemed fitting somehow to disappear into the same brutal landscape that had given me everything and then taken it all away. The wind cut through my coat like it was made of paper. Ice formed on my beard and eyebrows. Thunder stumbled in the deep snow, snorting his distress, but I urged him on. We'd been riding for over an hour, and I figured we were far enough from the ranch that no one would find us until spring. That's when I saw it. A faint flicker of orange light through the swirling snow. A cabin I'd never noticed before, tucked into a grove of pine trees about 50 yards off what used to be the old mining trail. Smoke was rising from its chimney, barely visible against the storm. My first instinct was to turn away. I hadn't come out here to find people. But Thunder was struggling now, his legs shaking with exhaustion and cold. Even in my dark state of mind, I couldn't let a good horse die for my selfish plan. "All right, boy," I murmured, steering him toward the cabin. "We'll wait out the worst of it, then continue on." As we got closer, I could see the cabin was small and rough, probably built by some prospector years ago, and long abandoned. But the smoke was real, and when I dismounted and led Thunder to what passed for a shelter beside the cabin, I could hear voices inside. Children's voices. I hesitated at the door, my hand raised to knock. This wasn't part of my plan. But the storm was getting worse, and even I wasn't foolish enough to stay outside in this weather. I knocked firmly. The voices inside immediately went silent. "Who's there?" came a young voice, trying to sound brave, but clearly frightened. "Name's Jake Harrison. I'm caught in the storm and need shelter for my horse and myself." After a long pause, I heard the scraping of a heavy bar being moved. The door opened just a crack, and I found myself looking down at a girl of maybe 12 years old. Her brown hair was tangled, her dress was patched and dirty, and her face was thin with hunger. But her eyes held a fierce protectiveness that reminded me of a mother wolf guarding her cubs. "You alone, mister?" she asked. "Just me and my horse." She studied me for another moment, then opened the door wider. "Come in, then." But no sudden moves. "I got a rifle." I stepped inside and immediately understood why she was so cautious. Behind her stood 3 other children, 2 boys and another girl, all clearly siblings, all painfully thin and wearing clothes that had seen much better days. The oldest boy looked to be about 10, the girl maybe 8, and the youngest boy couldn't have been more than 5. The cabin was barely warmer than outside. A small fire struggled in the stone fireplace, and I could see they were burning anything they could find. Bits of broken furniture, scraps of wood, even what looked like pages from books. The children were huddled together near the fire, sharing a single torn blanket. "I'm Sarah," the girl with the rifle said, still holding it pointed in my general direction. "These are my brothers and sister, Michael, Lucy, and Tommy. Pleased to meet you," I said, keeping my voice gentle. "How long have you been here?" "Near on a week," Sarah replied. "We was traveling with our pay to California, but he took sick and died back in Laramie. Folks there said they'd send us to an orphanage, but—" She lifted her chin defiantly. "We ain't going to no orphanage. We stick together." The youngest boy, Tommy, stepped forward despite Sarah's sharp look. He had the same brown hair as his siblings, but his eyes were a startling blue, and they held a wisdom that seemed far too old for his small face. "Are you going to hurt us?" he asked simply. The question hit me harder than it should have. Here I was, a man who'd come out into a blizzard to die, and this child was asking if I meant them harm. Looking at these 4 orphan children, hungry and cold, and trying so hard to take care of each other, something stirred in my chest that I'd thought was long dead. "No, son," I said, kneeling down so I was at his eye level. "I'm not going to hurt any of you." Tommy nodded as if he'd already known that somehow. "Good. Sarah gets scared sometimes, but I told her you had kind eyes." I looked around the cabin properly for the first time. It was in rough shape. Gaps between the logs let. In wind and snow, the roof leaked in several places, and there was almost no furniture left. But what struck me most was how little food they had. I could see a small bag of what might have been flour, and a few cans that looked empty. "When did you last eat?" I asked. The children exchanged glances. "Yesterday morning," Michael said quietly. "We found some roots under the snow." Yesterday morning. These children had been without proper food for over a day. In this cold, with a storm raging outside, I thought about my saddlebags on Thunder, where I'd packed enough jerky and hardtack for several days. Food I'd brought because some part of me hadn't been quite ready to starve, even if I'd been ready to freeze. "I've got food on my horse," I said, standing up. "Let me bring it in. Why would you share with us?" Sarah asked suspiciously. I paused at the door, not sure how to answer. "Because you're children and you're hungry? Because seeing you reminds me that there's still good in this world? Because for the first time in months, I have something to do besides think about my own pain? Because it's the right thing to do?" I said finally. I brought in my saddlebags and watched their faces light up as I unpacked jerky, hardtack, coffee, and even a small bag of sugar I'd forgotten I had. Sarah lowered her rifle for the first time since I'd arrived. "You don't have to give us all this," she said, though her eyes never left the food. "I've got plenty," I lied easily. "Let's get some coffee brewing and warm up this jerky." As I built up the fire and prepared the meal, the children slowly began to relax around me. Michael told me about their journey from Missouri, how their mother had died 2 years ago, and their father had decided to start fresh in California. Lucy, quiet but observant, helped me tend the fire. And Tommy seemed to have adopted me already, sitting close beside me and chattering about everything that popped into his 5-year-old head. Our pa used to say that when you're lost, sometimes you just gotta trust that the right path will show itself, Tommy said as we ate. "I think maybe you're part of our right path, Mr. Jake." I looked at this little boy, so thin I could probably span his waist with my hands, so young he should have been worried about toys and games instead of survival, and felt something crack inside my chest. "Maybe you're part of mine too, son," I said, surprised to hear the words come out of my mouth. The storm raged on outside, but inside the cabin, warmed by food and fire and the presence of these brave children, I found myself thinking not about dying, but about living. About how these four had survived on their own for a week. About how Sarah had stepped up to protect her siblings, despite being just a child herself. About how Tommy's simple faith that things would work out somehow reminded me of my own son. "If I'd lived long enough to have one, Mr. Jake," Tommy said, as the wind howled around the cabin. "Are you sad about something?" The question was so innocent, so direct, that it took my breath away. I looked at his blue eyes, full of concern for a stranger he'd just met, and realized that this child could see something in me that I'd thought I'd hidden. "Yeah, son," I said softly, "I am sad about something. Mama used to say that sadness is just love with nowhere to go," Tommy said, curling up against my side like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Maybe you just need to find somewhere new to put your love." As the little boy fell asleep against my shoulder and his siblings settled in for the night, I stared into the fire and wondered if maybe, just maybe, I already had. I woke to the sound of Tommy's excited whisper cutting through the morning stillness. "Sarah, Sarah, wake up." The storm stopped. Pale sunlight was filtering through the gaps in the cabin walls, and the howling wind had indeed died down to nothing. I could hear the drip of melting snow from the roof and the distant call of a hawk circling overhead. The children were already stirring, and I realized I'd slept better than I had in months, despite the hard floor and the cold. There was something about having other people around, even children, that had quieted the voices in my head that usually kept me awake. "Morning, Mr. Jake," Tommy said, grinning at me with a gap-toothed smile. "You snore." "Tommy," Sarah scolded, but I could see she was fighting back a smile. "It's all right," I said, sitting up and stretching muscles that protested the night on the floor. My wife used to tell me the same thing. The mention of Mary brought a familiar pang, but somehow it felt different this morning. Less like a knife, twisting in my chest, and more like ... remembrance. Like I could think of her without drowning. I looked around at the children in the morning light and saw how much worse their situation was than I'd realized. Michael was coughing, a deep rattling sound that spoke of too many cold nights. Lucy's lips had a blue tinge that worried me, and all of them were thinner than children should ever be. "We need to get you all someplace warm," I said, making a decision that surprised me. "My ranch isn't far from here. You can stay there until we figure out what comes next." Sarah's expression immediately grew wary. "We told you we ain't going to no orphanage." "I'm not talking about an orphanage. I'm talking about my house, where there's a working stove and real beds and enough food to put some meat on your bones." "Why?" she asked bluntly. "Why would you do that for us?" It was a fair question, and I wasn't sure I had a good answer. Yesterday, I'd been ready to die, and now I was offering to take in 4 orphan children. But looking at Tommy, who was watching me with those trusting blue eyes, I knew I couldn't just walk away. "Because you need help, and I have a place where I can help you," I said simply. Before Sarah could respond, Tommy jumped up from where he'd been sitting. "I want to show you something, Mr. Jake. I found it yesterday when I was looking for firewood." He scampered over to the far wall of the cabin, where I could see several loose boards. Tommy squeezed his small hand behind one of them and pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. "It was stuck back here real good," he said, ringing it over to me. "I can't read all the words, but Sarah says it's important." I unfolded the paper carefully. It was a letter, written in fading ink, and I could see why Sarah thought it was important. At the top, in careful script, were the words, "For whoever finds this." I read it aloud so all the children could hear. For whoever finds this, my name, is Martha Wellen, and if you're reading this, then I am likely dead, and my children are in need of help. This cabin was my last home before the consumption took me in the winter of 1887. I have no family left to care for my 4 little ones, and I pray that whoever finds them will show them the kindness that has been shown to me by strangers throughout. My life got to whoever takes them in. These children are not a burden, they are a blessing. They have brought me more joy in their short lives than I had any right to expect. Love them, guide them, and know that you are doing God's work. In my strongbox under the loose floorboard by the fireplace, you will find what little money I have, saved along with the deed to my late husband's claim up near Bitter Creek. It's not much, but it's honest wealth, and it's meant for whoever cares for my children. Remember that love is the only thing that grows when you give it away. These little ones have enough love in them to heal any heart, no matter how broken. Trust me, I know. God bless you for your kindness. Martha Wellen, December 1887. The silence that followed was profound. Tommy had found his way back to my side and was leaning against me, while the other children stared at the letter with wide eyes. "But we ain't the Wellen children," Lucy said quietly. "We're the Kellys." "Doesn't matter," I said, folding the letter carefully. This note wasn't just for her children. It was for any children who needed help, any children who were lost and scared and trying to survive on their own. I looked at each of them in turn. "Martha Wellen wrote this for you." Tommy looked up at me with those impossibly blue eyes. "Does that mean you're going to take care of us like she wanted?" The question hung in the air like the morning mist. I thought about Martha Wellen, a woman I'd never met who had died alone in this cabin, consumed by disease, but still thinking about the welfare of children who might need help. I thought about her words. Love is the only thing that grows when you give it away. And these little ones have enough love in them to heal any heart, no matter how broken. My heart was certainly broken. Had been for almost a year now, ever, since Mary and Elizabeth died within months of each other. I'd been walking around like a ghost, going through the motions of living, but not really alive at all. Last night I'd ridden into a storm fully intending to die. But this morning, looking at these 4 children who'd been caring for each other with such fierce determination, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Purpose. "Yes," I said, and was, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Yes, I'm going to take care of you." Sarah stepped forward, her protective instincts still strong. "You don't know us. We might be trouble." "Everyone's trouble sometimes," I said with a slight smile. "The question is whether you're the kind of trouble worth taking on. Are we?" Michael asked, speaking up for the first time that morning. I looked at him, 10 years old and trying so hard to be the man of the family, coughing from too many cold nights, but still standing straight and proud. I looked at Lucy, quiet and observant, who'd been helping take care of everyone without complaint. I looked at Sarah, barely 12, but already showing the strength of a woman twice her age. And I looked at Tommy, who somehow maintained the open-hearted trust of a child, despite everything he'd been through. "Yeah," I said, "you're exactly the kind of trouble worth taking on." We spent another hour in the cabin, during which I found Martha Wellen's strongbox exactly where her letter said it would be. Inside was a modest amount of money and, more importantly, the deed to a mining claim that could potentially provide for the children's future. But as we prepared to leave from my ranch, it was Tommy who surprised me one more time. "Mr. Jake?" He said as I was saddling Thunder. "Are you still sad about whatever was making you sad?" I paused in my work, considering the question. Was I still sad? Yes, the grief over Mary and Elizabeth was still there. Probably always would be. But it felt different now, less like a crushing weight, and more like a part of me that I could carry without being destroyed by it. I'm still sad, son, I said honestly. But it's a different kind of sad now. Good sad or bad sad? I thought about that as I lifted him up onto Thunder's back. Good sad, I think. The kind that reminds you that you loved someone very much, instead of the kind that makes you forget how to love at all. Tommy nodded as if this made perfect sense to him. Mama used to say that the people we love never really leave us. They just change how they stay with us. As we made our way through the snow toward my ranch, Tommy chattering excitedly about everything he saw, I realized that maybe Martha Welland's letter had been right. Maybe these children were exactly what my broken heart needed. And maybe, just maybe, I was exactly what they needed. The man who had ridden into the storm last night, planning to die, was gone. In his place was someone who had 4 children to raise, a mining claim to investigate, and a reason to see what tomorrow might bring. The children's reaction to my ranch house was worth every moment of doubt I'd had during the 2-hour ride home. Tommy's eyes went wide as saucers when he saw the 2-story log house with its wraparound porch. Lucy gasped at the sight of glass windows. Real glass, not just shutters or oiled paper. Michael straightened up with something approaching pride when I told him there was a proper barn for Thunder and the other horses. And Sarah. Sarah just stood there taking it all in with those serious brown eyes, probably calculating whether this was too good to be true. This is all yours? She asked quietly. It is, and for now, it's yours too. I led them inside, watching as they marveled at things I'd taken for granted. The cast iron stove that could heat the whole kitchen, the pump that brought water right into the house, the beds with real mattresses and wool blankets. It had been so long since I'd seen my home through anyone else's eyes that I'd forgotten how comfortable Mary and I had made it. Tommy, you'll take the small room upstairs, I said, making decisions as I went. Michael can bunk with you. Sarah. And Lucy can have the larger room. There are clothes in the chest that belong to... I paused, then continued. That might fit you with some alterations. The clothes had been Mary's, and some baby things I'd never been able to bear removing. But seeing Lucy shiver in her thin dress, I knew Mary would have insisted these children wear them. Sarah noticed my hesitation. We don't want to take nothing that has meaning to you. They'll have more meaning being worn by children who need them than sitting in a chest gathering dust, I said, and realized I meant it. The first few days were an adjustment for all of us. The children moved through the house like they were afraid of breaking something, eating carefully and speaking in whispers. I found myself learning how to cook for 5 instead of 1, remembering what it was like to have voices in the house, footsteps on the stairs, life happening all around me. Tommy adapted fastest, as children often do. By the 3rd day, he was chattering away to me about everything he saw, asking endless questions about the ranch, the animals, how everything worked. His curiosity reminded me of myself at that age, when my father first brought me to this land. Mr. Jake, how many cows do you got? He asked one morning as we checked on the herd. About 200 head, I replied, watching him count on his fingers to try to imagine such a number. That's a lot of cows. Do they all have names? Some do. The special ones, anyway. Michael had taken to helping with the morning chores without being asked. He was careful and thorough, reminding me of myself at his age. Lucy helped Sarah with cooking and cleaning, the 2 girls working together with an efficiency born of necessity. But it was Sarah who still held herself apart. She participated, she helped, she was polite, but I could see the wheels turning in her head, always planning, always ready to grab her siblings and run if things went bad. The breakthrough came at the end of the first week. I'd been in town getting supplies and had stayed later than intended, talking to Doc Peterson about Michael's cough. When I got home after dark, I found the children huddled together in the kitchen, Sarah holding Tommy while Lucy clung to Michael. "We thought you weren't coming back," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Why would you think that? Folks who take in strays usually change their minds pretty quick," she said with the bitter wisdom of someone far too young. "Figured. You'd come to your senses and decide we're too much trouble." I set down my supplies and knelt in front of them. "Sarah, look at me." She raised those brown eyes, so full of hurt and suspicion. "I'm not folks. I'm Jake Harrison. This is my home. And as long as you want it to be, it's your home too. I don't change my mind about important things. And you four are about the most important thing that's happened to me in a long time. But we ain't really your children," she whispered. "Maybe not by blood," I said. "But family isn't just about blood. It's about choice. It's about caring for each other. It's about showing up when things get hard." I reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm choosing you, Sarah. All of you. Every day." That night, for the first time since. "They'd arrived," Sarah cried. Really cried, like the 12-year-old girl she was instead of the fierce protector she'd had to become. I held her while she sobbed out months of fear and responsibility and exhaustion, and felt my own heart cracking open in ways I'd thought it never would again. 2 weeks later, I took them all to town to get proper winter clothes and to start the legal process of becoming their guardian. The reactions were mixed. Some folks thought I was crazy, a single man taking on 4 children. Others, like Doc Peterson and Sheriff Morrison, thought it was exactly what both the children and I needed. "You look different, Jake," Doc Peterson observed as we watched the children explore the general store. "Lighter somehow. Feel different." "Too," I admitted. "It's funny. I thought my life was over when Mary and Elizabeth died. Turns out it was just ... paused. That evening, as we sat around the dinner table that had been silent for so long, Tommy made an announcement that surprised. "You saw. I think we should tell Mr. Jake the secret," he said seriously. Sarah nearly choked on her soup. "Tommy, no. What secret?" I asked, curious. Tommy looked at his siblings, then back at me. "We've been talking about it every night after you go to bed. We want to ask you something, but Sarah says it's too much to ask." "Nothing's too much to ask," I said. "What is it?" Sarah looked mortified, but Michael stepped in. "We want to know ... Could we maybe call you Pa? Like, if you don't mind." The question hit me like a physical blow. Here I'd been thinking about legal guardianship and responsibility, but these children were thinking about family. Real family. I looked around the table at these 4 remarkable young people who'd somehow brought my house back to life. Sarah, still protective, but learning to trust. Michael, growing stronger every day with proper food and warmth. Lucy, quiet but with a smile that could light up a room. And Tommy, whose innocent wisdom had already saved my life once. "I'd be honored," I said, my voice rough with emotion. "I'd be honored to be your Pa." The smile that spread across Tommy's face was worth every moment of pain I'd ever endured. "Really? You mean it?" "I mean it." "Pa," he said, testing out the word. "Can I call you Pa right now?" "You can call me Pay whenever you want, son." That night, as I tucked Tommy into his bed, a ritual we'd developed over the past weeks, he looked up at me with those blue eyes that seemed to see everything. "Pa, are you still sad sometimes?" "Sometimes," I admitted. "But it's okay to be sad sometimes. It means you loved someone very much. Do you think Mama Elizabeth and Baby Elizabeth would like us?" The question caught me off guard. I'd told them about Mary and Elizabeth one evening when Tommy had asked about the pictures on the mantel. "I think they'd love you," I said honestly. "I think they'd be happy that you brought me back to life." "Good," Tommy said, settling into his pillow. "I talk to them sometimes at night." I tell them about you and how you saved us. You saved me. Too, son. All of you did. I know, he said with his simple acceptance of childhood. That's what Martha said would happen in her letter. She said we had enough love to heal any heart. As I closed his door and headed to my own room, I thought about the man I'd been just a few weeks ago, so consumed by grief that I'd ridden into a storm to die. That man seemed like a stranger now. In his place was someone who had 4 children to raise, a house full of laughter again, and a heart that was learning to heal. Martha Wellen had been right. Love was the only thing that grew when you gave it away. And these 4 children had enough love in them to heal even the most broken heart. Spring came early that year, and with it, a transformation I could never have imagined. The children had settled into life on the ranch with an ease that suggested they'd been meant to be here all along. Michael had grown 3 inches and put on enough weight that his cheekbones no longer stood out sharp against his face. Lucy had started talking more, her natural intelligence showing through in the questions she asked and the observations she made. Sarah had begun to relax her vigilant protection, allowing herself moments of pure childhood joy. And Tommy had appointed himself my constant companion, trailing after me as I worked, chattering about everything and nothing, his presence a constant reminder of how much my life had changed. Pa, why do you think God sent us to find you in that storm? He asked one morning as we checked the cattle. It was a question I'd been pondering myself. 6 months ago, I would have said there was no God, or if there was, he'd abandoned me. Now, watching Tommy count calves with the serious concentration of a much older child, I wasn't so sure. Maybe because we all needed each other, I said. Maybe that's how God works sometimes. He puts people together who can help heal each other's hurts. Makes sense to me, Tommy said with the simple acceptance that made him so wise for his age. The legal adoption proceedings had gone more smoothly than I'd expected. Judge Hawkins, who'd known me since I first came to Wyoming, fast-tracked the paperwork when he saw how well the children had adapted to ranch life. The only complication had been a letter from relatives in Missouri, distant cousins who'd heard about the children and wanted to claim them. They're just after the mining claim Martha Wellen left, Sheriff Morrison had confided. Heard there. Might be silver up there. But these children have a home with you, and that's what matters. The hearing had been brief. Judge Hawkins asked each child individually if they wanted to stay with me, and their unanimous yes had sealed the matter. I was officially the father of Sarah, Michael, Lucy, and Tommy Kelly Harrison. But the real moment of truth came a month later, when those Missouri relatives showed up at my door. Harold and Beatrice Kelly were a sour-faced couple in their 50s, dressed in city clothes and carrying themselves with an air of moral superiority that immediately put my back up. We've come for the children, Harold announced without preamble. They belong with family. They are with family, I replied, not inviting them in. Blood family, Beatrice clarified. We're their father's cousins. We have more right to them than some stranger. I could see the children watching from the kitchen window, Sarah's face pale with fear. They'd been through so much already. I wasn't about to let these people undo all the healing we'd accomplished. The court disagrees with you, I said firmly. I have legal custody. Courts can be wrong, Harold said. These children need proper moral guidance, not to be raised by some confirmed bachelor. The insult was clear, but before I could respond, Tommy slipped out the front door and positioned himself directly in front of me. This is our pa, he said with 5-year-old certainty. We don't want to go with you. Children don't always know what's best for them, Beatrice said dismissively. I know what's best for me, Sarah said, preparing beside Tommy. Michael and Lucy flanked them, the 4 of them presenting a united front. And it's staying here with Pa. Now see here, Harold began, but I'd heard enough. I think you need to leave. I said, my voice carrying the authority of a man defending his family. These children have made their choice. The law has made its decision, and you're not welcome here. This isn't over, Harold threatened. We'll be back with proper legal representation. You do that, I said calmly. But understand this, these children are my family now, and I protect my family. After they left, the children clustered around me on the porch, seeking reassurance. They can't take us, can they, Pa? Lucy asked quietly. No, sweetheart, they can't take you. You're home now. Forever? Tommy asked. Forever, I confirmed, and felt the last walls around my heart crumble completely. The Missouri relatives never returned. Sheriff Morrison later told me they'd inquired about the mining claim, discovered it was worthless, and lost interest in the children entirely. It was exactly what I'd expected from people who saw children as property rather than precious souls to be cherished. As summer turned to fall, I found myself marveling at how completely these 4 young people had transformed my life. The ranch was more prosperous than it had ever been, partly because I had help with the work, but mostly because I was fully engaged with life again. The house rang with laughter and conversation. Even the meals tasted better when shared with people you loved. One evening in late September, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Tommy climbed into my lap with the easy affection that had become natural between us. Pa, can I tell you a secret? He whispered. Of course, son. That night we met you in the storm, I prayed for someone to come help us, and then you showed up. Did you now? Yep, but you know what's funny? What's that? I think maybe God sent. Used to help you too, 'cause you were sad that night. Really, really sad, but you're not sad like that anymore. I looked at this remarkable little boy who somehow understood things that many adults missed. You're right, son. I was very sad that night. So sad, I thought I might not make it through. But we helped fix your sadness? You did more than that. You gave me a reason to be happy again. Sarah, overhearing our conversation, came to sit beside. U.S. Pa, can I ask you something? Always. Do you ever regret it? Taking us in, I mean. We're a lot of work and a lot of expense. I shifted Tommy to one arm so I could wrap the other around Sarah. Sarah, do you see that sunset? She nodded. It's beautiful, isn't it? But do you think I regret that it costs me the whole day, too? See it? That doesn't make sense, Pa. Sure it does. Some things are so wonderful that whatever they cost is worth it. You ... You're my sunset. You're worth everything. Even when Tommy gets into the flour barrel? Michael asked, joining. U.S. with Lucy. Even when Tommy gets into the flour barrel, I confirmed, making the little boy giggle. Even when Lucy accidentally lets the chickens out? Sarah added. Even when Lucy lets the chickens out? Even when I burn the biscuits? Michael asked. Especially when you burn the biscuits, because it means you're trying to help. What about when I argue with you? Sarah asked quietly. Even when you argue with me, because it means you're comfortable enough to disagree. That means you trust that I'll love you anyway. And we do, Tommy said solemnly. Trust you, I mean. I know you do, son. And I trust all of you, too. That night, after the children were in bed, I sat alone on the porch, thinking about the journey that had brought us all together. A year ago, I'd been a broken man planning to die in a storm. Tonight, I was the father of 4 remarkable children, with a house full of love and a future full of possibility. I thought about Martha Welland's letter, about her words that love was the only thing that grew when you gave it away. She'd been right. The love I felt for these children hadn't diminished the love I carried for Mary and Elizabeth. It had made my heart bigger, made room for both grief and joy to coexist. As I headed inside, I could hear Tommy talking to himself in his room, having one of his nighttime conversations with people he couldn't see. I paused outside his door to listen. Mama Elizabeth and Baby Elizabeth, this is Tommy again. I told Pa about how we prayed for him to find us, and he said he was praying too, sort of. He was so sad that night, but now he smiles all the time. Sarah says that's what families do. They help each other not be so sad. I think you'd like us, and I think you'd be happy that Pa has us to love now. Don't worry, we love him real good. Night, night. Standing in that hallway, listening to my 5-year-old son comfort the ghosts of my past while claiming his place in my future, I felt something I'd thought was gone forever. Complete peace. The man who'd ridden into a storm to die was truly gone. In his place was someone who had 4 children to raise, a ranch to run, and a heart full of the kind of love that only grew stronger when shared. Martha Wellen had been right about something else too. These children had enough love in them to heal any heart, no matter how broken. They'd certainly healed mine.